The stories, the journey, the wild behind the scenes, and much more. I'm Dave Anthony, and I'm the host of From Garage to Stadiums.
Your point about John Lennon is another insight in the book, how off the rails he was with the drugs. And it almost was like he was bitter at how they'd been steered into this good boy image, and how Paul sort of reinforced it because Paul was so smooth with the press, and John was almost disappointed that they were painted as the good boys when really he wanted a more down and dirty kind of approach. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. John would have been better suited in the Rolling Stones, believe me.
I always thought that.
And Brian Jones would have been better suited in the Beatles. They could have done a swap, and everybody would have been happy, but we wouldn't have had the music that we had.
Right.
John resented being put in a suit. He resented following the rules. He liked flying in the face of what the norm was. He liked to shake things up, and Paul was a good boy. Paul had always been a good student and always cared about what his parents thought about how he should act. There were different kinds of people, and the incredible thing is that by the time they're 27 years old, they are growing up and growing apart. They have had this wonderful young adulthood together, but now they're young men. And these young men looked at each other and they went, oh, I don't want that. I don't want to be the rough, acid, drunken guy. I don't want to be the good boy. They had become different people in their late 20s, and they were headed for the divorce mill. It's as simple as that.
Did you get a sense for how they wrote? I know they wrote together in the early days, but did you get a sense for the type of songs John might write versus Paul, or was there no discernible difference?
I don't think there was much of a discernible difference. What I found that was really unique was even when they were suing each other, even when they weren't speaking to each other, Paul could get a knock on the door around 6 o'clock at night, and John would be there saying, listen, I've got this lyric. I can't finish the last line here. What's going on with it? And Paul took Hey Jude over to John's house to play it for him because he didn't think the lyrics were any good and he needed John's input. So, they were still contributing to each other. They still cared enough. And if you saw those videos that showed them, that we've seen the last year with them on TV in the final sessions that they were doing, you got a sense of how on the same wavelength they still were when it came to music.
Yeah.
When I watched that, I watched John and Paul's eyes. They never took their eyes off of each other. When one of them said something, the other completely intuited it. They understood it. And that, in a nutshell, is the uniqueness of the Beatles.
Yeah. The opposites attract and complement each other, and they can also lead to the downfall.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
In 1969, the disagreements were coming to a full head during the recording of the Abbey Road album. Yoko Ono became a constant and distracting presence in recording sessions, and even band meetings, as John refused to be alone without her. And the controlling, some say nitpicking nature of Paul McCartney that Bob spoke about also took its toll. On the business front, the band had disagreements over who should represent them now that Brian Epstein, their manager, was deceased for almost 2 years, and that led to acrimonious infighting, particularly between Paul McCartney and the other 3 members. Despite the tension, the Beatles still produced incredible songs on the Abbey Road album, with 2 all-time classics by George Harrison, Something and Here Comes the Sun, and Come Together, a song written by John Lennon. And with that, the recording of Abbey Road in the summer of '69 marked the beginning of the end. The album was wrapped up in August, and John Lennon had made up his mind in September and privately told the band he was leaving. But with Abbey Road set for release just weeks later, the group kept quiet, unsure if Lennon's decision was final. Fast forward 6 months, on April 10th, 1970, Paul McCartney officially announced that he was done with the Beatles. Lennon, frustrated, felt like he'd already made that call months before. And then there was the album Let It Be. Although recorded before Abbey Road, it would not see the light of day until 1970, giving fans one last batch of Beatle hits before the curtain finally closed, with songs like Let It Be, The Long and Winding Road, and Get Back.
What we got was a gift from the gods, and we didn't have it long, 10 years. Uh, but we got an enormous output of music, 232 songs, that will live with us forever. And um, you got to take what they give you. That's the long and
What
short of it.
what surprised you about the Beatles in your sort of work and research? Was there anything that stood out that you sort of went, wow?
What stood out for me most of all as I was working on it was I realized that I was writing my own life story. Everything I was, everything I become was because of the Beatles. They gave me a sense of who I was, where I was headed, a sense that I didn't have to be a doctor in college, that I could come out of college and maybe pursue my love of music. I could dress the way I wanted. I could live the way I wanted. I could speak in the language that my contemporaries spoke, which is the language the Beatles put in our mouths. That's what surprised me more than anything. I just thought, I'm writing my own life story here. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, because the Beatles book that you have that I wrote is 960 pages, but the manuscript was 2,800 pages. And so there were 1,700 pages of fabulous stories
Wow.
that got cut out of it.
We need part two then,
Yeah, no, it's never going to happen.
the sequel. I
Yeah.
honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I was blown away by all the reveals that you gave us on the band, and I wanted to ask you one question. I mean, their place in music history. Obviously, they're at the top of that pantheon. They've influenced everybody. I mean, who haven't they? Bruce Springsteen talks about seeing them on TV. Virtually everybody. The Stones credit them as part of their, ascension. Is there any?
Exactly right.
Yeah,
No, listen, Frank Sinatra did Beatles music, before he died. Look, they changed the way they changed the culture. I mean, it's as
yeah.
simple as that. And they gave us a songbook that will live long past our time. Uh, and it really set the pace for everything else that came out of the 60s.
Yeah.
We owe the Beatles all of that.
What we know how we ask you to pick three songs. Is that even possible in this, or should we pick three albums? What do you think?
Oh yeah, let me pick three albums. uh, let me do that. Well, okay. For me, albums number one, Revolver and Rubber Soul, and of course the White Album. I love the early hits. I mean, they were great. Who doesn't love Me Do? And I saw her standing there. But as a musician, I can tell you that Rubber Soul, Revolver, and the White Album never fail to astound me when I listen to them. And I make sure that I listen to them often. Every time I feel a little jaded about music, I put those on and I put the headphones on, and I am transported somewhere else. I can't even listen to the songs. I start to listen to the components of the songs, and those components blow me away because as a musician, I know what it took to create those, and to I can duplicate those easily, but I could never have created them on my own. And those three albums, you know, Revolver, as I said, I think changed everything. They changed rock and roll into rock. Uh, Rubber Soul is, I think, the Beatles at their pinnacle. And the White Album is the White Album. There's just so much on there that in so many different forms that it takes me away. It really does. It blows my mind.
Bob's book, The Beatles, the biography, has sold over 1 million copies. It still sells well today. And if you want a book that takes you back inside the bedroom of two boys as teenagers who met and changed the course of music history, and want to hear about a band, but from sides that I never knew. I mean, I thought I knew the Beatles, and Bob's book reveals so many things about them that you'll be shocked, surprised, elated, and ultimately entertained. And Bob, we want to thank you for writing this gift for us, but also for being here today.
Dave, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.